It may seem unlikely that the Czech brand Skoda and distant New Zealand have anything in common. Yet, by the end of 1966, in the small town of Otahuhu, the production of New Zealand's first domestically made vehicle had begun, and it had Czech roots. Skoda was already familiar to New Zealanders, as Lauren and Clement cars had been imported as early as the beginning of the 20th century. By the mid-century, a company called Motor Industries International Ltd. Began assembling Skoda cars locally. The car was named Skoda Trekka. Why assembly and not full imports? The answer lies in the country's customs and tax policies. Importing car kits and assembling them locally was much more cost-effective than bringing in complete vehicles. In 1965, experienced Czech engineer Josef Velebný, who had once worked alongside Václav Klement, partnered with importer Noel Turner to organize local Skoda assembly. Upon arriving in New Zealand, Velebný studied the country's roads, climate, and market demands. He quickly realized there was a strong need for an affordable, practical off-roader. Using mechanical components from the first-generation Skoda Octavia, he designed a simple utility vehicle that fit local needs. Turner enthusiastically supported the idea, and by late 1965, the first prototype of what would be named the Treka was shipped to New Zealand. The light off-road vehicle, with a payload capacity of up to 500 kilograms, bore similarities to the British Land Rover and proved to be an ideal solution for New Zealand conditions. The Trekka's promotional brochure proudly stated, "This is the Trekka, the first production vehicle designed and manufactured in New Zealand for New Zealanders." And indeed, more than 50 New Zealand companies were involved in producing components for this vehicle. Josef Velebný and Noel Turner envisioned local farmers as the main target buyers. So, what kind of vehicle was this two-door, extremely Spartan-looking car? Firstly, it was rear-wheel drive, so calling it an off-roader was only conditionally accurate. It was more of a rural crossover, inheriting from the Octavia a backbone tubular frame and chassis with independent suspension. The wheelbase was shortened from 2,389 millimeters to 2,165 millimeters, and to compensate for the lack of a low-range gearbox, the final drive ratio was increased from 4.78 to 5.25, with an optional differential lock available. All in all, for a single-axle drive vehicle, the Treka offered a fairly decent off-road potential. The engine was mounted in a traditional layout, longitudinally at the front. This four-cylinder OHV engine, with a 1.2-liter displacement, produced 46 horsepower at 4,500 RPM, making it relatively high revving. While there were no real variations in terms of engine or optional features, customers did have some choice regarding the body style. It could be a fully open convertible, a two-seater pickup with a hardtop and separate cargo body, a station wagon with a two-piece tailgate, or an 8-seater version with a plastic roof and a side-hinged rear door. Buyers could also choose the wheelbase. The vehicle turned out to be fairly short, 3,590 millimeters, and light, 920 to 980 kilograms, yet capable of carrying a load of 450 to 500 kilograms. The Spartan interior, devoid of any upholstery, speaks for itself. But given the Trekka's utilitarian purpose, it's unfair to criticize it too harshly. After all, the Land Rovers of that era didn't offer much in the way of luxury either. Production of the Treka began in mid-1966 at a pace of around 6 units per day, and the first few weeks confirmed that Velebný had been right. The car, priced from £899, generated strong interest among its target audience, not only in New Zealand but also abroad. That's why export quickly began to Australia, Samoa, and Fiji. Then, Motor Industries International Ltd. followed a familiar path and decided to ship kits for Treka assembly in Indonesia. However, New Zealand legislation, which had previously facilitated the assembly of Skoda vehicles, played a cruel joke on the Treka. In the early 1970s, the laws changed, and the country was literally flooded with Japanese four-wheel drive SUVs boasting reliability that the hastily assembled Treka could hardly match. Moreover, Skoda itself, represented by the Czechoslovak company Motakov, lost interest in the project for financial reasons, as supplying components was less profitable than delivering complete vehicle kits. As a result, both supply and demand dwindled almost simultaneously, and the Treka's production ended in 1972. Over 6 years, approximately 2,500 units were produced in New Zealand, not a significant number by global standards, but quite respectable for screwdriver assembly within a small-scale operation. In any case, the Treka was destined to become a rarity, especially outside New Zealand. Nevertheless, Joseph Velebny did not stop there. Collaborating with the Pakistani firm Harun Industries, he created a similar vehicle for Pakistan. Based on the Skoda Octavia Combi chassis, the vehicle was named Skopak, Skoda plus Pakistan, and was even more rudimentary than the Treka. To minimize costs and simplify construction, the body consisted of a tubular space frame with fiberglass panels attached. The first prototype was created in 1969, with small-scale production beginning a year later. However, this had little connection to the Treka, and the Czech brand's off-road history paused until 2009, when the compact crossover Yeti was introduced. Yet, both it and the subsequent Kodiaq and Karak models were neither utilitarian nor particularly affordable. Nonetheless, it can be confidently stated that Skoda has always responded to current market demands, sometimes even in very local and geographically distant markets from Malada Boleslav. To conclude our video, let's delve a bit into the history of the Pakistani Skopak. Unlike the New Zealand Treka, which was produced from 1966 to 1973, the Skopak had a much shorter lifespan, being manufactured for only about a year, from 1970 to 1971. The Skopak project was a joint venture between the Czech company Skoda and Pakistan's Harun Industries Limited, which had previously imported Skoda cars and Zetor tractors into Pakistan. The vehicle was based on the Skoda Octavia chassis and was offered as a two-seater pickup with options for soft or hard tops. However, in 1971, anticipating a military conflict with India, the Pakistani government imposed a ban on the import of consumer goods, leading to the cessation of component supplies from Czechoslovakia and consequently the end of Skopak production. In contrast to the Treka, which over time gained cult status and became a collector's item, the Skopak did not receive similar recognition either in Pakistan or abroad. Given the operating conditions and vehicle maintenance culture in the region, most Skopak units have not survived to the present day. Even if some have, they haven't become subjects of restoration or participants in retro festivals. Thus, the fate of the Skopak was brief and unremarkable. This brings our video to a close. If you've watched this far, it means you found it interesting. Please support the channel by subscribing, liking, and clicking the notification bell to catch future uploads. I'd like to mention that I use AI-generated voiceovers because I'm not yet fully proficient in English. However, all other aspects, video ideas, scripting, material selection, and editing are done by me. Thank you for your attention, and see you next time.